off with my credentials since apparently they matter.
Oh, they definitely don't matter.
I'm an 8-year military veteran. I'm a college student. I'm a black woman, and I believe that white privilege exists. So we're going to start with that.
Thank you for your service.
And the reason why white privilege exists is because you guys refuse to acknowledge the history that put people in this position. You want to tell me that white privilege doesn't exist when white people had a fucking upper hand for 250 years to develop generational wealth, and that black people didn't get the right to fucking vote until the 60s, and you're going to tell me that white privilege doesn't exist? So, that sounds like it exists.
First of all, there's a question I do want to ask, which I can't seem to get an answer. What can she not do in America that a white person can do? What opportunity? You served in the military. You've made good choices. You're getting rewarded for them. You're going to live in the American middle class. What privilege do I have that you don't have that is based on skin color, not on wealth or socioeconomic status? Please.
The fact that you are sitting here with like little to no education trying to talk to people about white privilege is white privilege.
Tell me one thing I said that's wrong, and don't use an argument from authority. Make a good argument.
I have a degree.
Don't
I'm
cite
arguing
your
from
credentials.
authority
I have
because
a
I'm telling
degree.
you my life experience.
That's not your life experience.
Name
That's a
one-
degree.
Really? I'm sorry. Did you live my
thing-
life?
That means nothing.
Did you live my life?
That's
Name
a
one
degree.
thing
You're not smarter than
that
him
you
because you have a
can't do
degree. Just so you know
that
That's
I
a fallacy.
can do.
That's a fallacy.
Name one thing that you can't do that I can do.
I don't know. I can't make a whole $1.
What? You can't? Why?
Oh my God.
You're trying to tell me in the military women aren't paid the same as men for equal work?
In the military, up until 2 years ago, women weren't even allowed to do most of the jobs that
Answer the
men
question. You just said you couldn't make $1. You said you could not make $1. You served in the military, which
Not
is
to mention that people in the military actually get paid a bullshit wage, but we're not going to
All
talk
right,
about
so
that.
now we're moving
Yeah,
over
let's
to
talk
that. Now
about.
we're moving
That
on
has
to
no-
that.
Let's
nothing
talk
to do
about
with
for a
skin
second
color.
that you want to say that
What-
everyone in the military.
what can I not do?
Wait,
The feminists
so
lie.
that makes it
Radical
right.
feminists lie, and they also sell. There's so many different ways they sell your oppression, and she has purchased all of them today.
What frustrates me is you served our country, which deserves to be applauded, and you have lived a life of a victor, and you have the gumption to tell me you're a victim without evidence. You were not able to cite one thing that you cannot do that I can do. If you make good choices, you will get those choices rewarded. And you brought zero evidence except an argument from an authority and an insult to my lack of a college degree, of which I am so proud of because I'm not indoctrinated because I didn't go to college. Thank you very much. For the next person.
Put them in the dirt, say it again, man, and that's a reverse. Never rehearse, jumping in first. Call up the nurse, put the beat in the hearse. This is absurd, take the berserk. Don't get on the tracks, man, and they better swerve. Don't got a nerve, man, I never curse. Just casting these spells when I'm spelling these words. That's real, that's too real. I've been Roosevelt, I need a new deal. Trying to figure out what I should do still. I'm really never waiting here too still. I don't even know what I should say at all. Should I jump on in? Should I get involved? God surround me, they love to talk. I take it all with a grain of salt. This one that I'm doing, they never see through it. And all of this rap that I see that they ruin. I came in the game and I'm trying to undo it. And still they all say they don't know if the shoe fit. I gotta see through it, man, won't be deluded. With all these illusions, I know it's disputed. I gotta keep growing, they see what my root is. I tell you I run this, I'm done with excuses. Give me for a minute, trying to get what I've been giving out. Do it for the tickets, I don't listen to the critics. I'ma push them to the limit. And these rappers getting timid. I've been balling like a pivot. I don't step into the scrimmage. I just playing when I'm in it, trying to run it till the ribbon. And they know that I've been tripping when I make them see the vision. Man, I put them in the prison with these bars that I've been spitting. And this life that I've been living, I'ma go, I'm on a mission.
Take two for the drop, jaw plotting on the bar. See me putting in the work, whole milk, I don't do the soy. Always been about my king, never about the money. Now you know I'm a trap before I stop the grind. I'm a trap before I stop the grind. I'm a trap before I stop the grind. Said I got my eyes on. My eyes on.
I just did it 24 song in a bed, in a building.
So how many genders are there?
There's so many. The way that the
So many. So many's not a number.
chromosomes actually break down with intersex genders and the way that it actually happens, that is a starting point that you learn in like 5th grade. But when you actually
Like
real
5th grade.
experiment, you learn that the way that data breaks down when it comes to
Can you give me a number or not?
genders.
Number?
A number? You have 2. That's 6th grade science. When you move on, there are hundreds of different categories.
So what you learn in 6th grade becomes less true as you get older? Like gravity becomes less true?
That is a basic building
Newton's
block
third
that
law
children
becomes less
learn
true?
in order to understand the concept of gender. When you break it down into actual
Gender and
experiments when it
sex are
comes to
directly
chromosome and sex, it breaks down into hundreds of different categories that actually differentiate between just 2 genders. What you're saying is there are facts and you don't believe in there being opinions.
Yes, I am
and
saying that there are facts.
This is a scientific fact that if you talk to any biologist, you will learn.
So in biology, they teach you that there's XX and XY chromosomes. So give me a number of how many genders there are.
Hundreds, many. It breaks
Unlimited,
down,
right?
It breaks
So
down
it's
in so
anything
many
you
more
want to be,
categories.
anything you feel.
No, it's what scientists determine given specific
XX,
categories.
XY.
Why do you need a number if you're
Bingo.
already
Why do you need a number? That's a great
You
question.
literally have no idea how it works. You're
Because
using
then you could
6th grade
self-identify to be anything you want at any time.
Literally, biologists are saying that this is the way
so
the gender actually breaks down.
so you would accept the argument that you can self-identify to be anything at any time.
Yes, because literally
Okay.
biologists have
That's
told me
what's
that
wrong
gender-
with not having a number.
There are hundreds of different numbers.
But again, you don't have a number. I just want to recap. that.
Hundreds. There's hundreds of different
So where would
ways
you
that
put
data
it?
breaks down.
Okay, so the data breaks down in 2 very simple predominant categories, XX and XY. And that's no? Oh, so there's not male and female.
I think what happens is you don't understand science and scientific
Oh, I don't.
backing,
Oh, okay. So
and you just want to
so I
put
can
forth this
so
like
I
fascist
so
simple.
oh, fascist simple. Here we go. That's it.
That will keep you.
So what is fascist about saying there's 2 genders?
Is you're just being completely not faithful to what actual science is telling you.
No,
because you
science
wanna
is
put
quite
forth
simple. That
your
there's
own
a
oppressive narrative
Oh,
about how you
oppressive.
think
So
gender
and now
should
I'm
be
oppressive.
believed.
How am I being oppressive? The truth comes out eventually. So how am I being
Yeah,
oppressive?
you're being oppressive.
How am I being oppressive?
You're being oppressive by denying people the ability to have.
How have I
their
denied
own
anyone
identity.
anything? Okay, denying people identity. People can identify however they want. I'm only going to use 2 genders.
The energy a little different when the blessings accrue. Hey, who you talking to? Just know I ain't no regular fool. Could be anything in the world, but I can never be you because I stand tall like I'm on my tiptoes, baby. You think a little too small. I got big goals, baby. Hey, where the money at? Look, I just need the info. Pronto, I go and get it and split it with my kinfolk daily, and I'm the type of that might change my number on you. Yeah, that's how you react when people took a slumber on you. Pretty brown skin, baby, I can see the summer on you. You see all the bread, and I know it make you wonder, don't you, don't you, don't you? Ooh, I ain't surprised at all. Seen them rise and fall. Went up the mountain, it wasn't hard to climb at all. At the top, I found some relief. I finally got some peace. Carry on, but please don't mess up the mood. Yeah, I worked too hard for it. No, I need to beat it before you mess up the mood. Yeah, ooh, I worked too hard for it, and I need it, so please don't mess up the mood. Don't mess up the mood. Don't mess up the mood. Yeah, I worked too hard for it. Yeah, don't mess up the mood. Oh, it's so crucial, I gotta keep it. It's in the air, it's everywhere. No, it's not a secret, and I bet they didn't think that I'd ever get it. Everything you've done, I get it. The life you're dreaming, I live it, and I'm coming in high. You better get out the kitchen. Yeah, I could make a hit on whatever you pitching. Baby, let me fill up whatever you missing, or you like it up at the top. It's a better view, isn't it? I'm not surprised at all. No way. Hey, what you need? Come on, just pay the fee. I supply it all. Went up the mountain and it wasn't hard to climb at all. At the top, I found some relief.
So I'm a conservative. One thing I have a hard time rationalizing to my liberal friends, and conservatives on TV and politicians have a hard time articulating, is intelligent reasons why the wall must be built. I am curious your thoughts on that.
3 quick things. Number 1, I'm going to say some facts. I'm going to talk about fairness. Then I'm going to talk about sovereignty. Some facts. An illegal alien in the state of Arizona is twice as likely to commit a crime versus a natural-born citizen. Fact. 90% of all heroin and fentanyl come across the southern border. Fact. Over 10,000 kids are illegally sex trafficked across the southern border every single year. Fact. We have 56,000 illegal immigrants in our federal prison system. fact, and countless in our state penitentiary system. $135 billion a year, that's how much is the financial burden on U.S. taxpayers every single year that illegal immigrants drain from our system. Fact. You put all that together, that's a pretty compelling argument that we have some problems with our southern border. Those are some facts. Number two is fairness. As Candace said, it is not fair to the people in Bolivia, it's not fair to the people in Bangladesh, and it's not fair to the people in Belarus that had to wait in line, fill out an application form, not commit a crime, and then wait a decade to come into this country to maybe have it.
Welcome to Turning Point USA's proudly hosted 2021 event, the Gen Free Tour. Joining us on stage tonight, Charlie Kirk. We are proud to be here in San Diego, California. Let's get this started. Now, welcoming to the stage, Charlie Kirk.
Awesome. Thank you, Jurgen. Wow. Geez, great to be in person, right? Oh my goodness. Thank you. I want to, wow, we have a lot of ground to cover tonight, but I just want to say, gathering in person is essential. It really is. And, you know, Jurgen and I were texting. I just want to say, man, you have a great leader here. You really do. And Leanne as well. You know, I've had the opportunity to travel the country the last year. I've spoken at over 50 churches, and I have been, some would say, a vocal critic of pastors not speaking out on what I consider to be the critical moment for our freedom. And this pastor in this church, all of you, you've been courageous the last year. You opened your church, you spoke out on the issues of the day, and you're being led very, very well. And so, Jurgen, thank you for opening the church for all this. God bless you. It's terrific. I also want to shout out what I consider to be modern heroes in more ways than one. People say, Charlie, who's going to save us? Well, we're going to talk about that because it's you. And it's your action. We're going to talk about that. But the people that are stepping up every single day are right down here in purple shirts. It's the Turning Point USA students on campus. And they say, you know what? I am going to tell the world that I'm a conservative. I might get kicked out of a fraternity or sorority, lose some friends, less likely get a job. But I'm going to speak out for our nation and our country and for freedom and for liberty. And these are heroes. They really are. So we have a lot of ground to cover tonight, and I want to take some questions. I want to hear from you. I want to learn from you, see what's going on. But I want to address what we're all feeling right now, which is we are going through what I call a cultural blitzkrieg, shock and awe campaign, where it's every day you wake up, you say, wait a second, they're packing the court, 51 states, we're not allowed to call men men or women women anymore. And it feels as if America needs a breakthrough, that those of us that love our nation, that remember, 10 years ago when we judged people based on values and character, not on skin color, we feel as if our voice is not always being represented. We feel as if we are getting hammered every single day, where your kids are being taught to hate themselves and hate the nation, that your children, when you send them off to college, you're afraid they're going to come back as atheists that don't share your values. It's time for those of us that believe in freedom and believe in liberty and ultimate purpose. It's time for us to reflect on how do we get here and what can we do about it. So here's what I'm not going to do tonight. I'm not going to give you false hope. I'm not going to do that. I can't stand it. I call it hopium, where feels good, but it doesn't do good. Instead, we are going to talk about what every single person here tonight can do to contest for your freedom and liberty. And guess what? You're closer than you might think. And now, so Turning Point USA, we're a 501c3, and so we take no opinion on this at all whatsoever, but you can guess my personal opinion. The recall's happening in California, everybody. Wow.
Turning Point USA takes no such opinion on these matters, but I will talk personally on this. Good job. You guys could have gave up. You guys, those of you that circulated those petitions, those of you that believed that tyranny needs to be challenged, good job. Because today the Secretary of State begrudgingly announced they could not find enough signature verification. Isn't it weird how they do signature verifications now when it comes? I thought you're not allowed to do that. They couldn't find enough because patriotic people in this state, of all political parties, by the way, they said, I still believe that we have the consent of the governed, that church is more essential than a cannabis dispensary, that church is more essential than a Planned Parenthood. And what's happening here, it actually gives me hope. It's one of the things I really want to talk about tonight, which is what I'm seeing in California, is that you have no reason to do what you just did. You have every reason to have just submitted. Sit down and obey. Do what you're told. Why circulate the signatures? This state can never be won. But there is a virtuous rebellion that has been brewing in California of people that said, you know what? I get it. We're losing population. We're the laughing stock of the entire country. But I still believe in this ideal that the people we put in office, we're there because we gave them permission. They don't give us permission to go worship our Creator. They don't give us permission to open our business. And they don't give you permission for you to be able to educate your children. And Governor Newsom, your time is up. And that is what citizen government is all about. And so they begrudgingly announced today that it's going to happen. So what you just did, all of you, I'm guessing everyone signed the signature. I'm guessing, could be wrong. And you got your friends to do that. What you just did is you sent a memo to the ruling class. You are now living rent-free in Governor Newsom's head. Every day, he's thinking about that church in San Diego that isn't happy with him. Every day, he's thinking about citizens rising up. Every day, he's thinking about that he might no longer have power. Now, this is what's important. That's all they care about is power. We care about truth. We care about bringing people to ultimate purpose. For them, their end game is being in charge. So for Governor Newsom, you just challenged the thing that he cares about most. All of you that signed those petitions and you got your friends involved, you said, you know what? This government is a citizen government. It's a compact, it's a contract, and the consent to the governed was completely obliterated in the last year. And I'm actually given more hope from the people of California than some of these other states that just say, it's over. What's the use in doing it? Now, to be fair, I don't know if the people of California could have been pushed any further. No, seriously. More than almost any other state, you guys have been used and abused by the ruling class in this state. But there was a system to work through that. And what people say, well, Charlie, what's the point? The recall's not going to work. I said, you're missing the entire idea. The idea is that you force the issue. The idea is that you're going to make them spend tens of millions of dollars they don't want to spend, to have to defend decisions they made that are indefensible. Where they kept schools closed, where they closed the church, where they shut down small business. We lost 40% of small businesses over the last year. And we lost more young people to suicide than from the Chinese coronavirus here in this state. And now Governor Newsom has to answer for that because you are in charge. He is not. And so it gives me great hope. I love when people that have truth play offense. I love when people know what's good in the world because we have ultimate purpose. And not everyone here is a Christian. I want to first of all say welcome to this church. We're going to talk a little about why I believe what I believe. Because what's happening right now is we have people that are drinking from the streams of liberty that are unifying together. And sometimes they find themselves in a church and they say, I never thought I would have been in a church in a million years. What's amazing, though, is that Aristotle famously said politics is the ultimate form of community because it combines morality and sociability. Is that now politics is bringing people together. Is that this idea that we know something's wrong and dramatic action is necessary is actually convening people that otherwise would never be in the same room together. And so I love when people play offense. I love when I see new ideas of pushing back. I can't stand bullies. Pushing back against bullies and people in charge. And so it's worthy taking a step back and asking ourselves the question, what happened in the last year? How did we get at this moment right now where I believe our freedoms and our liberties are more fragile than ever? So there's been 3 inflection points. And this church and Jurgen passed all 3. But most churches across the country did not. Most people in America did not. The first of which was our handling of the virus. Let me be very clear. Not the virus itself. The virus itself is a very real threat for a very specific group of population in this country. However, our handling of the virus, I will submit to you, did far more damage than the virus ever would. That our handling of the virus destroyed our way of life, our freedoms, our liberties, mental health. Alcoholism has increased. Drug usage has increased. We had an immature, reactionary response to the Chinese coronavirus. And we all know people that have been impacted by it. However, we also know even more people that have had their lives probably permanently altered because of our reaction. I get 2 weeks. I get a month. I even get 6 weeks. But then at some point you have to say, are we keeping ourselves locked down because I hope nothing bad happens to me, or because I actually want to pursue virtue and understand what liberty really is? Liberty's hard, everybody. It's really hard. It is actually the human norm to not live in liberty. Most of human beings have lived being completely dominated by another human. You know that the number one exercise that humanity has participated in history is trying to dominate other people. Wars, slavery, transportation of other people. This idea that you get to be born in a system where you do have some capacity to speak, to gather, to pursue your own destiny. That's really, really rare. In fact, so you should ask yourselves the obvious question, which they won't teach you in college because there's no wisdom in most colleges. You know why there's no wisdom? It says it very clearly. The fear of the Lord, there is wisdom. There's no God, there's no wisdom in our colleges. That's why. And so we should ask ourselves the question, why is America one of the few countries ever where we have this little grasp of liberty? Why is it the human norm? Here's why. Generally, people want to be taken care of. Because when you decide that I don't want to be taken care of every single day and be told what to do, I'm going to have to take responsibility for my own actions. As soon as you take that step of responsibility, that's tough. Because then you got to take ownership for your actions. It's easier to say, lock me down, 2 masks when I shower, send me my check in the mail, turn on Netflix, Hulu, deliver me the packages and boxes, and I will do as you tell me to do. I won't leave my house at gunpoint, I promise. That's easier. You know what's hard? Saying, man, I know how this virus operates. I'm going to act accordingly. I'm going to take care of people that need it. But I'm also not going to allow the lockdown measures to dominate my life or the life of people around me, especially when you see 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds that are going to have permanent mental health issues because of what we just saw the last year. The people that inflicted pain upon themselves. So our reaction to this virus, I would argue, is going to go down as one of the worst mistakes in American history. In fact, a state like Florida that opened up fully in May has a far lower percentage of small business closures, the mental health issues under control, no major spikes in alcoholism, no major spikes in drug usage, and the virus rates almost on par with this state that completely and totally locked down. And the second oldest population in the country. Some of you guys are very familiar with the book of Exodus. Moses frees God's chosen people. Wasn't an easily won state of freedom. The trials, tribulations, they almost got absolutely wiped off the face of the planet. God interceded and wiped the Egyptian army. So how do God's chosen people thank God a couple chapters later? They're in the wilderness. They're living free, right? That's the human ideal. That's what we should want. Instead, they say, man, who's this Moses guy? This guy, you're the problem. And they say, Moses, take us back to Egypt. What they're saying is take us back to slavery, because at least we ate meat. We ate better. We ate better as slaves. Now, by the way, they had all their food provided for them. They had everything they needed. It is the temptation of our nature to want to retreat into a place of being taken care of. It's tempting, isn't it? We all know it. Because as soon as you speak out, you step out, you're a little exposed. You're going to have to account for your actions, take responsibility for who you are and what you do. But I'll tell you this, those of us that love freedom and liberty, we know that liberty is not doing whatever you want to do, however you want to do it. No. See, that's a false way that we teach young people liberty. Liberty is the pursuit of virtue. What is virtue? That's a great question. Virtue is the state of being where your decisions and what you do will not put you in a state of perpetual bondage. So, for example, I could do whatever I want to do. I'm a state of liberty. You guys, if you've met alcoholics or you've met people that are unfortunately addicted to substances or a lot of things young people deal with, going to websites they shouldn't be going to and trafficking things on the websites they shouldn't be looking at, you're a slave to that. So the liberty that we've always had as the American ideal is the pursuit of the proper way for human beings to interact in this chaotic world. So the lockdown, we decided to throw away this idea of American liberty and say, you know what, we're going to trust the experts. So we created this new phenomenon in America called this cable news medical expert. It's a really bizarre thing. They've been wrong about everything since they ever opened their mouth. Dr. Fauci should have been fired on day one. And anyone who dared speak out against this, we were kicked off social media, slandered, pushed back on. And I'm here to tell you that this whole experiment that we just went through is not going away. This is a harbinger for things to come. It is. We're going to talk about what we can do about it. Aristotle, who I really enjoy, one of the great classics, he wrote about things that are eternal, which is what we call wisdom, right? There's the things that change and the things that don't change. There's practical knowledge and eternal knowledge. So practical knowledge is who's the governor of California? Gavin Newsom for now, right? And so that's practical knowledge. For now. Emphasis on the for now. Eternal knowledge are things that never change. No matter what your professors tell you in school, human beings will act in a predictable pattern. It's built into who we are. It's in our fallen state of nature. So Aristotle observed human behavior and wrote extensively about it. Much of the Christian faith can be discovered through reading Aristotle, an objective way of looking at reason in the natural world. So Aristotle wrote extensively about tyranny. I want you to listen to this carefully. Tyrants preserve themselves by not letting there be any schools or other group gatherings for leisured pursuits, and doing everything possible that will keep all the people as unknown to one another. I wonder what keeps people unknown to one another. As possible, since familiarity breeds a greater degree of mutual trust. What if I told you that they're trying to have you trust your neighbor less? What if I told you by mandating that you walk around that no one can see each other all day long, where you have a 6-year-old that's supposed to wear a mask, and let me just say this plainly, that's child abuse, okay? To mandate that a child wears a mask is child abuse. It is child abuse. You see, they want to force you in a state of paranoia. When you're paranoid, you're willing to do things you otherwise wouldn't do. You're willing to give away your other freedoms and liberties, but when you have trust, trust is the opposite of paranoia. So when you're paranoid, you say, of course, the governor must know what he's doing. The health experts say the following, and it goes even deeper than that, which is what I believe is behind some of this agenda, which is trying to destroy the binds that hold us together as human beings. See, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. Great place to be from, by the way. You see, unlike California, we have term limits in Illinois. It's 1 term in office, 1 term in jail. So, it's true. Oh, I got more. So my grandmother was from the north side of Chicago, passed away in the mid-1990s, lifelong Republican. She's been voting Democrat ever since. So it's true. All right, I'll stop with Illinois. I'm in a state that actually might be able to compete with Illinois at all the worst attributes. Is that they want to break the trust between one another. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I went to a multiracial high school. I was a minority in the high school I went to as a white male. It was 53% of my high school was English as a second language. And we never went around talking about skin color. We talked about values and character, who was a good person. And we really got along well. In fact, we weren't given these racial diversity seminars or this nonsense on white privilege or this garbage about how we're systemically racist. Instead, we said, why are you acting like a fool? Stop it. Just stop doing that. Act a certain way and you're going to get a certain reward. In fact, if I went around 10 years ago, I feel like I'm talking about a different America at a different time. The fact it's so recent actually gives me hope we can hopefully turn it back away from this nonsense. If I went around talking about people's skin color, I would have been suspended from my school. If I would have said, you know what, I think a good idea is if we just overly generalize and stereotype this group of people because they all act a certain way and they all have a certain privilege. Decent people who used to run the high school I went to would have said, that's incredibly racist. Because it is. When you start grouping people based on their immutable characteristics, you're not just engaging in something troublesome. It's an intentional tactic to divide us one from the other. So that's the second inflection point. The first was our reaction to the virus. The second inflection point was the BLM incorporated stuff that you've seen go through the church, through your neighborhoods, through this local area. And so, let me be very clear. Racism is not of the Lord. It is a sin. Racism is not something that we should tolerate, that we should embrace. However, I don't think we give our society enough credit. I really don't. There's a supply and demand issue with racism in America. There's an incredible demand to try and find the racists. Yet there's such a low supply that anytime anyone says anything off color, that's racist. No, actually, it's not. Math is not racist. And so that we are actually the most decent, multiracial, multilingual, multicultural nation ever to exist in the history of the world, and we never give ourselves credit for that. And so we saw how that happened over the last year, and I spoke out about that early because I have very little patience for people that are willing to intentionally get into the exercise, or at least the practice, of tearing one against each other. And it took many decades, about 100 years in America, for us to really find this healthy national identity, which is that I don't care about your skin color, I care about your character. And now we're seeing that all be intentionally ripped from us. And understand that there's a motivation behind this. And the motivation is that they want you walking around thinking about your skin color and other people's skin color. It says very clearly in the Bible, neither slave nor Greek nor Jew, we are all one in Jesus Christ. Skin color doesn't matter to the Lord. Your soul matters. And while we're on the topic, if all of a sudden the position of one of the leading political party on the other side, or their philosophical community, is going to say that we are so unbelievably racist, basically their argument that they're submitting is that every single person that is trying to immigrate from this country, from Central America, hates themselves. That's basically the argument that they're making. If we are so unbelievably racist, why did 3 million black people come here legally since the 1980s? If we're so racist, why is it that Asian Americans are far richer on average than white Americans in our country? In fact, if you actually account for the most important bearing on a human being's success in America is whether or not you were raised with a mother and a father. A black child raised with a mother and a father is far more likely to succeed in America than a white child raised by a single mother. In fact, maybe it's less about skin color and more about the destruction of the nuclear family in our country. And then the third inflection point is the election. Man, I worked hard at that. Yeah. You guys remember I visited your church, the other campus, and I love this church. You guys are awesome. You're terrific. And I was doing 4 events a day, crisscrossing the country, and obviously with Turning Point Action and myself personally, we were really involved in that. And man, I'll tell you, that's not the way things should work in our country. Look, elections have a lot of different purposes. They're a test more than anything else, right? Trying to take the pulse of a nation. What do you believe on certain issues? Who do you want to represent us? Again, the American system, if you had to boil it down to one idea, is that our system is about consent. It's different than the French system. It's different than the Italian system. It's about consent. What do I give you permission to do? And I could tell you that the first and the second thing, the lockdowns and the BLM Incorporated, played into the election. Where all of a sudden, because of the lockdowns, we decided it'd be a good idea to go mail a ballot to every person who's ever lived in our country over the last 100 years. And anyone with a straight face says, oh yeah, it's perfect. Anyone that participates with 150 million inputs, and we're supposed to believe everything was perfect, don't look into it, don't ask questions, and if you do, you're an awful person. I'm not going to tolerate that. And I tell this to every single person in elected office. If we do not fix the way we do elections in our country, then we're never actually going to be able to fix our country. That we need to fix the way we do elections in our country. And so, this is not a small thing. Elections are pressure release valves. They're ways that we are able to peacefully tell our leaders, we're not happy with you. We want a different direction. Maybe we are happy with you. And when people no longer think your elections work, and then you dare ask a couple questions about it, and you say, sit down, you're an awful person, there's nothing there, then all of a sudden you're really intentionally pushing the boundaries of this constitutional republic. This republic is the consent of the governed, the people. And so how do we actually get that consent exercised and vocalized? You might be called all these awful names at work. You might be called these awful names on social media. You might be just completely attacked all the time. But when you get into that voting booth, you have that opportunity to just say, this guy, go fight for me. And if all of a sudden you think that someone might be tearing up that ballot, or there's 10 more ballots that you've never thought of that are going to be coming in, at least the idea of it, if you even had that cross your mind, and you're not 100% certain, then all of a sudden that's an attack on the integrity of the entire government. So here's what I can't understand. If the people on the left are so confident that this system worked perfectly, they should want to open the books and prove how much they won by. They should say, look at this, we did so well. They should say, we could prove everything, just look at this. We won by so much. Instead, it's lawsuit and accusations and attack on democracy. And that should only give you more evidence that that's an inquiry worth having. Look, I'm a very logical and rational person. There's some things that came across my radar that just weren't true. Like, I got this one email from 100 people. Like, Mike Pence is in Gitmo. I'm like, he's not in Gitmo, okay? Or this Italian thing. I don't know if you guys saw that one. So but this idea that you all of a sudden have tens of millions of ballots being sent to every single person. How many people here got a ballot you didn't request? Anyone? Raise your hand. Wow. Well, now we know that the left never does anything wrong in the pursuit of power, right? We know that they don't break rules. We know that they act perfectly and great conduct. So when all these ballots are just flying around, we know they're all in the honor system, not to fill them out or send them in. Instead, they go into the Secretary of State's office and say, here's an extra ballot, please take it. We know that's what they do, right? Because they never spied on a president before. They never made up an entire Russian hoax. They never decided to entrap a former lieutenant general of our armed services. They never did any of that. In fact, they are perfect operators of the code of conduct of the biblical ethic, and I totally trust them when there's ballots all over the place. And yet, if you even ask the question, you are immediately criticized. So it's happening in Arizona right now. There's an audit happening, and it's a good inquiry. And look, it's a good thing that's happening. And here's my advice to you. You have to keep the focus and the pressure on. Just always go where the facts lead you. Just ask the question, like, hey, why is it that all of a sudden these stories pop up about the Nevada Native Project where people were posting on Facebook that they're giving cash out for people's ballots in front of a Joe Biden bus? That's a real thing that happened. Or what about this person that in Wisconsin, and she was a whistleblower, came on a local news agency. She deals with people that are elderly, that are suffering with mental cognitive decline, that every single one of her patients complained that someone came into there and said that they voted on their behalf and they all voted for Biden, but they wanted to vote for Trump. Did she make that up? Is that worthy of inquiry? Of course it is. And these are real stories, one after the other. And you guys that watch my podcast, my live stream, you guys know I do not do the hopium thing. I'm a fact-first guy. And also, I'm also unafraid to take the arrows when I know that there's something there. And let me tell you right now, there's smoke and there is fire. And we are not going to take our eyes off of what happened there, ever. Now, so those are the three inflection points. And I'm happy, and my friend Greg Denham's there. He does a great job. Church right down the street. He's hosting me. Great. And Greg and Jurgen and Rob McCoy and so many others, they've been courageous pastors. And a lot of you felt like, I gave it my all this last election. I'm burned out. I get your emails. I see your messages. I gave it everything I got. Well, look, I actually had to make a decision. I made a decision in late January that I am going to go above and beyond and say yes to every speaking event and to do 2 podcasts a day, and we expanded our radio show because I knew more than ever that they wanted us to give in, that it was a deliberate strategy through that all-out cultural blitzkrieg, and I use that term blitzkrieg intentionally. Many of you might not be familiar with that because I don't know what they teach in these schools, like Maya Angelou or like I don't know what they teach. Okay, so a blitzkrieg was a type of military tactic that was used by the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany in the late 1930s, early 40s, against particularly what's known as the Blitz in downtown London. The great Winston Churchill, the greatest man of the 20th century, who we can thank Western civilization wasn't smashed to ruins thanks to him, and I'm actually going to reference him later. A blitzkrieg is more psychological warfare than it's actual warfare. It was always, in the declassified documents, the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany admitted they wanted to break the will of the British people. They wanted them to give up more than anything else. They knew they were not going to be able to have enough casualties to actually make a meaningful difference. But they bombed at night, loudly, in your face. They wanted people to be talking during the day. Is it worth it? Can we win? You see, more than anything else, they wanted to convince the British people that there was no hope. I know a lot of you, whether you want to admit it or not, because it comes across my radar screen, a lot of my own thought process, say, oh my goodness. We're looking at Dr. Seuss is gone and Aunt Jemima and the California school curriculum. They have these like Aztec incantations to child sacrificial gods. No, it's an actual thing. I don't know if you guys heard this. No, it's true. This is why you guys got to subscribe to the Charlie Kirk Show. No, it's true. In California, in the California state curriculum, it is there in the curriculum that teachers are to teach. It's optional, but it's there. And so the fact that it's even optional, that it's even like remotely, that they have the kids repeat the incantations to the Aztec god of child sacrifice. You can look it up yourself, Christopher Rufo, The Revenge of the Gods, City Journal. Look at it yourself, and it passed here in California. We're supposed to believe this is not a spiritual war. Like, give me a break. This is, oh yeah. No, it's not. Everything's material. And then they're putting in these, like, Aztec child sacrificing in the curriculum. So I get it. But understand that you are participating right now in their most offensive moment. They've made a decision. They being the left, and they being the people that do not share our values. And it's more than liberals. I can deal with liberals. Liberals are people that believe in free speech and openness and markets. They're generally, they're like Alan Dershowitz. There's not that many of them left. I'm talking about leftists. I'm talking about Ilhan Omar, okay? I'm talking about AOC. I'm talking about Nancy Pelosi. And so, not a fan? And so I think it's helpful for us to admit the last year has been tough. So where did we go wrong? Well, the lockdowns, just to give a little bit of grace, there was no playbook for this. They used so many different subliminal impulses. Trust doctors always. Never challenge the medical establishment. Look out for other people. And then the constant drumbeat of that if you dare leave your home, you're going to massacre your entire community. What did they do? What did they do? You think about this. They used your own desire to be a good person against you. Think about that, right? They used a moral argument, which was actually an immoral stance, against you. So it was hard to argue with that, right? It was like, don't do anything, shut down your schools, or else you're going to all of a sudden participate in the worst massacre in American history. It was very tricky the way they did that. And then, of course, the racial thing and then the election. So this is the moment that we're at right now. And I want to get to what I consider to be the good news, and then I want to do some questions, which is that I actually believe that we're going to win. I know this perplexes people all the time, and so we talked about this the other day. So look, there's 4 reasons, and you should write them down. And then we're going to talk about the only thing that's getting in the way of those 4 things of happening. And it's one word. We talked about this before, and it's a crisis. There's a lot of crisis happening, but there's one crisis. Okay, 4 things. First of all, you have to believe it before I get even to the 4 things. It's not just a thing you say. You have to really believe it. This is a test of your faith. Now, a lot of people are afraid. You know that it says do not be afraid 365 times in the Bible, 1 for every single day? Every day. And, I was sitting back here, I just said, what does the Bible have to say about fear and courage? Quite a lot. In fact, it's almost the human norm to be afraid. That it's as if it was repeated in almost every single book of the Bible to allow you to have some position, some posture to be able to not be afraid. And there's a word we have that. Ephesians 6:10, finally be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Isaiah 54:4. Do not be afraid, you will not be put to shame. Do not fear disgrace, you will not be humiliated. You will forget the shame of your youth and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood. Peace I leave with you, John 14:27. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. And so you really have to believe it. You have to write it down on a piece of paper. Here's my challenge to you. From now to the end of the year, every time this pops in your head, you write on a piece of paper, we are going to win. That's right. You're going to write it down. We are going to win. So what does that look like? Here's why. Here's 4 reasons. This is the one that I love the most, is that there's something special about America and Americans. Winston Churchill, again, the greatest man of the 20th century, he was the only man smiling on the day of Pearl Harbor. It's true. The only man in the West that was smiling. So Pearl Harbor, we all read about it, learned about it, know about it. Awful. Preemptive attack against innocent people on a military installation, an act of war, a day that will live in infamy. But Winston Churchill heard the news and walked into his war cabinet with a smile a mile wide. And his fellow cabinet secretary said, "What is wrong with you? Like, the Americans just got bombed. There's blood in the ocean." And he said, "We have won the war." He said, "Because once the Americans awaken, it is a fire that never stops burning." So people say all the time, what makes America different? The French, they're good at enjoying life. The Italians, art. I guess. The Brits, expert complainers, the best I've ever seen. It's true. What are we good at? Well, we're not good at being punctual. We're not. We're usually late to the game, worrying about our own stuff. But the American spirit, it's in all of us. All of you that believe in this idea, regardless of skin color, racial, that stuff matters. It's your belief that we as Americans, when we step up, we solve problems. We do the impossible. We go to the moon. We win 2 world wars. We go fight for the good. And I'm telling you right now, we are one little inkling away when all of a sudden, as Winston Churchill says, that roaring beast awakens, and once it's awake, watch out. We are so close. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the second thing. They know it. They know it. Here's why. Do you notice how paranoid they are? They are the unhappiest winners I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen people that have won everything and they're angry all the time. That's why they're preemptively striking. Because it wasn't enough just to conquer France. They need more. They want to pummel you into submission because they're afraid. They're afraid that all of a sudden something they can't control, something they can't describe, something bigger than themselves, all of a sudden decent people that love their nation are going to wake up and say, what is going on? You know what? Pearl Harbor was just there. I'm going to take responsibility and you're done. That's what they fear. That's number 2. They are paranoid. There's no peace in their spirit. There's no stillness in their posture. There's no focus on the good. It's always the next major crisis. Now we're talking about something in North Carolina. We've got to burn down Minneapolis. They're constantly, always asking for revolution because they're paranoid. They're paranoid that they might actually lose their grip on power. And for us, this is what makes Americans always different. The founding fathers embodied this better than anyone else. It's that we actually don't look at power as the ultimate idea. We don't. We look at power as a temporary, if necessary, action to pursue the good. Look at George Washington. George Washington could have been king for life and appointed his kids to rule over America, and he stepped down. So he said, you know what, my time here is done. A Roman ruler by the name of Cincinnatus, who was a general, did exactly the same. Fought a war for the good, went back to his farm afterwards. We actually named Cincinnati after General Cincinnatus. Where it's, for us, we actually would rather build our families, build our church, build a business, go to school and study. But if we have to, we'll close our textbooks. We'll go to the school board meetings. We're going to get engaged in that posture of action. Because the other side, for them, the thing they value most is being able to not just tell you what to do, but this false idol of power. And here's the third reason. And it's just one word. It's truth. Just one word. Nothing they say is true. Nothing. And I know that seems so overly simplistic, but they are declaring war on the laws of nature and nature's God. And we know this. Genesis 11, everybody. How did that work for Napoleon, Alexander the Great, the Nationalist Socialist Workers' Party, when you're just always pushing, trying to push back against nature? Oh, we know better. We're going to build a building up to the heavens. God will scatter and cause chaos in their ranks. And they are pushing and pushing. They're saying, oh, men aren't men, and women aren't women, and men can be pregnant. That's the new one, right? No, it's true. It's true. Because when you do not have truth as the most important value, then there's no way you can actually be victorious. But we do. So this segues to what I believe, and I'll get to the final thing, the fourth thing, which is the crisis. And this is the only reason this won't happen. The only reason that all that stuff won't happen is what I call the courage crisis in America. There is a crisis of courage in our country. The number one form of censorship in America is not big tech censorship. It's self-censorship. It's shutting yourself up. I'm not going to talk about politics at the meal. I don't want to lose these friends. I'm not going to tell my neighbors what I think. I get it. You live good lives. I get it. I understand what people say about you matters. Should it? I understand that how many Instagram likes you get is incredibly important. No, I do. I get it. Sam. You can be a lot of things, but if you are not courageous, they're all very brittle. You could be smart. You can be creative. You can be funny. You can be successful. You can be charming. George S. Patton, one of the greatest men ever to live, famously said that moral courage is the most necessary yet absent characteristic in men. Aristotle famously said, without courage there is no other virtue. That it is the virtue that holds all the other ones in place. And so what is courage? I ask this to younger audiences a lot, and they kind of stumble around by using the word in the definition. That's okay, it's not their fault. We don't teach children what courage is. Courage, simply defined, is doing the right thing or the good thing when the outcome is uncertain. It's that simple. When there's an unknown after the action. When you think about it, if you know how things are going to work out, that's not very courageous, right? Like buying a cheeseburger at McDonald's is not exactly, you know how it's going to work. You're going to get it and you're going to gain weight. Like, it's not that big of a deal, right? And stop buying Coca-Cola, by the way, please. Okay, just that, as a side note. Anyway, we are living on the coattails of the greatest generation's courage. Let me say that again. We are living on the coattails of the greatest generation's courage. And that gift that the greatest generation gave us, my grandfather who served in World War II, Erica's grandfather who served in World War II, who stepped up and gave everything for a good beyond anything imaginable to save the planet from unspeakable evil and tyranny on two fronts, sacrificing our own manufacturing base, metal, all of it, sending our own sons all across the world, many of whom never to return again. We are living on their coattails, and that time is running out. And to give you an idea of how heroic what they did is, isn't it amazing that we're still even able to experience how good of a country we still have here in 2021? That's how monumental it was what they did. And it wasn't just, I want to be very clear, it wasn't just the war effort. It's what they did after. What did they do after? They made a decision that they're going to commit to getting married and having children. They made a decision that they were going to build strong communities and reinvest in America. In the 1950s and the early 1960s, what we call the greatest generation, they came back as heroes and they became heroes in the home. And they raised big families. And they said, we want our country to have a connective tissue together. So we are living on the coattails of that greatest generation. And so, how does one become courageous? It's a really interesting question, right? It's one I've actually wrestled with a lot. And so I've realized that there's a courage crisis in our country largely because we have a lot to lose. You see, revolutions tend to work with people that don't have a lot. You think about it, right? Material stuff I'm talking about. Friends, relationships, connections. So you just have to ask yourself, does that matter more than pursuing the truth with courage? And if so, so be it. Now, some people say, Charlie, I'm going to lose my job. You might. You're right. You might lose your job. Make a decision. That's it. Maybe it's the right decision, maybe it's the wrong decision. I'm going to lose my friends. Yes, you will. But you'll make new ones. A lot of them. Some people say, so the first thing, and this is a good thing, if you're really wrestling with this and this is speaking to you, just take some time tonight and you say, you just list the courageous people that you've seen in your life, that you see in history, and you write them down. And you ask yourself the question, do I want to be more like them? Now, one of the main reasons we don't have courage growing in our country is we don't teach young people real stories of courage. And the Bible's filled with them. And courage, man, that's going to solve so many of these problems almost immediately. So let me tell you what courage looks like, just in one little instance. We have a Turning Point USA leader in Minnesota by the name of Avery. She wanted to start a Turning Point USA group. And high school leader, she started her Turning Point USA group, and within hours, there was these screenshots of these text messages just saying unspeakably awful and racist things that were being attributed to her. And she immediately denied it. She said, it wasn't me. I didn't do this. Of course, that didn't satisfy the teachers, the administration, or the other students. Walkouts ensued. Massive investigations happened. The FBI got involved. Investigating the sweetest girl, 16 years old in Minnesota. She got exonerated. And no one's apologized to her, of course, and they didn't actually ever reveal who made up these messages. It was a total hoax. In fact, the FBI said the person who made up these messages is not a current threat to the students of White Bear Lake High School. But you know what Avery's doing? She's leaning in. And she's saying, you know what? You tried to create a race hoax to stop me from starting this chapter. I'm going to make it bigger than ever before. That's courage. Courage is opening your state like Ron DeSantis when everyone says that you are going to be doing the worst thing ever. Courage is storming Normandy Beach when you don't know if you're going to live for another 10 minutes. Courage is opening your church when everyone says you shouldn't. And that's it. So you say, I need some of that courage. Well, you pray for it. It's of the Lord. Fear is not. It is not of the Lord. Fear is someone whispering in your ear saying, you're going to lose that. You're going to get, people are going to hate you. And look, I'm not immune to that. I'm not. There's plenty of times where I have to center myself and say, am I really going to speak my mind on this issue? Am I willing to go take the inevitable, whatever it is that they're going to throw at me? I'm not immune, guys. And there's times that I've chickened out. There's times where I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to, I've had a long week. I've already have all this nonsense. I'm not going to do it. So I'm not going to all of a sudden say I'm above it. We all go through it. That's the enemy that whispers in your ear. But I could tell you this. Every time that I clearly think, pray, and reflect on the proper course of action, I am rewarded beyond my wildest expectation. And here's the thing. There's a freeing component to once you act courageously. Because the worst thing that I then have to experience is thinking, should I have said that? Was that a piece of truth I should have shared with our audience? Is that a piece of truth someone needed to hear? Or did I just take kind of the easy way out and not clearly communicate that? So, we're going to win if every person in this room says, you know what? I'm not going to be a spectator anymore. So I'm going to tell you the two things that bother me the most, and we'll do some questions. Number one, when people put their hand on my back and they say, so how's it going out there? I turn and I say, what are you talking about out there? Here's what they're saying. They're treating me like a Roman gladiator. That's true. They're treating me like Maximus, okay? Hopefully it ends better for me, but whatever. What they're saying is, you fighting okay for me? And I always turn to them and I say, how's it going out there? Like, what are you doing? Like, oh, no, I delegated that responsibility to you. You are my funnel for action. Like, I hired you to do this. Like, you're the guy. And look, I get that, okay? I'm not saying you could do what we do at Turning Point every day and literally obsess and organize and focus on this every day. But if you don't feel a connection to the moment, then that's something you got to pray about. So how do you know if you're feeling a connection to the moment? What have you lost in the last year because you stood for truth? If you can't list something, you're a spectator, you're not in the arena. That's it. What have you lost? Because this comes at a price. It comes at a price. And it might be, you know what? I lost this connection to this person or this, whatever it is. But you're always going to gain much more, and you know that. You gain something bigger than material. You gain the peace of mind and the truth and the satisfaction with that. The final thing that bothers me is when people say, so Charlie, do you think we are going to win? I said, what am I, like Vegas odds maker or something? Like yeah, let me give you the odds. You know what they're really asking most times? They're saying, Charlie, can you give me permission to give up? Think about it, right? Why would anyone continue to do this if you thought I say, you know what, we're going to lose? What they really say is like, yes, I can go home, chill out, and they're going to eat me last. Right? So it's a completely irrelevant question. It's actually the most irrelevant question. Because there's so many different forces outside of our own action, and victory is the Lord's eventually. That is going to be left to Him and Him only. But I want you to imagine, I want you to think to yourself, what if you're in a position and you were an Augustinian monk and you saw the need for a revival and a reformation? And you said, you know what? No one's going to pay attention if I go nail 95 theses to some door. Look, I'm a very pro-evangelical Catholic. I mean that. But there's no doubting Martin Luther changed the world. What if Martin Luther would have said, you know what? I'm going to take it easy. Probability of victory against this institution, very low. But he decided, speak truth, and nail 95 theses. What if that person's in this room? Maybe you're in a situation that's bigger than you could imagine. What if you work for an employer or in a situation where you just happen to be the black swan moment? What if all of a sudden you happen to be in that black swan moment is a moment that you can't predict, you can't plan, that changes the course of history? And this happens all the time, by the way. So we're on the precipice of this, right? Because things are building. And one of the most famous ones of one person, Tiananmen Square is a great example of that. Just one person standing. Or one person saying something at the right moment and it just harmonizes with the country. We're right at that moment. And so it's going to actually require you. And so I'm not going to tell you the easy thing that everyone says when they do these events. So what we need is more action and all this, and yes, we need Republicans to win and Democrats to lose. That's like the most simple stuff, okay? I'm talking about the hard stuff. I'm talking about the stuff that really matters. I'm talking about whether or not you're going to make a rechartering, a change in your trajectory, where you're like, you know what? For the rest of my life, as I live in this greatest country ever to exist in the history of the world, when the opportunity presents itself, I will clearly, confidently, and courageously stand with truth against those who wish to suppress it. That's what really matters. And so people say, Charlie, how do we change the world? How do we do this? It's as simple as we go through the list. When Americans rise up with that form of courage, amazing, beautiful things are going to happen. I see we're right on the precipice, everybody, and I truly believe that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. That for every time they poke the eyes of Christians and of decent Americans, and they say, sit down and obey, they are fomenting a response that they do not anticipate. The only thing that is missing is your action and your courage. Let's do some questions, everybody, and thank you, guys. It's terrific. Thank you. Thank you. Cool. Let's do some questions.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Hi, Charlie. I'm Victoria. I'm the president of our USD chapter.
Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. So my question is kind of just like, how do I deal with this? I just wrote a paper the other day about in my African history class for a core curriculum requirement.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And my teacher is very liberal. And we're talking about the apartheid, and he asked us to relate it to some kind of either American or modern day event. So I wrote, not wanting to give him what he wanted about, the KKK or whatever, so I wrote about Antifa and the KKK.
Good for you. That's courage.
I got an 80% on the paper, and he wrote back to me, Victoria, Antifa is not a singular group, nor do they advocate in any way at all analogous to the KKK. And we've talked specifically in class about historical constructions of whiteness and oppression, and this reflection demonstrates very little recognition of how that power operates.
Yeah.
So usually I'm not afraid to respond to this, but he said in the past he worked at a high school where the Turning Point chapter at that school would call him indoctrinating. And he's made it very clear that he's against Turning Point. And I'm just trying to pass this core curriculum class, so what do I say?
Yeah, so you are in a situation that is not rare. And look, here's the problem, is that college becomes this kind of grade-taking hostage situation, right? And all of you guys experience this, is we're going to take what matters to you, your grade, we're going to take it hostage, and you're going to conform and say what we want you to say, and do what we want you to do, and if not, we are going to make you suffer. There's no good way out of it. You're handling it very well. The fact you got an 80 is pretty amazing, I have to say. That's actually pretty amazing.
I feel like I could have gotten 100. I definitely feel like I could have gotten 100.
Yeah, well, look, so I'll say this, that appealing to their overseeing board sometimes works, it usually doesn't, because they all agree, right? But look, I'm going to have you think and pray about something, is like, does the grade matter that much? Just think and pray on it. Maybe it does. Maybe it's like, I need the grade to get this and do that and all that. And if you're paying for a course, you should want to do the best in it, obviously. But if you are producing a good product and writing something worthy of that grade, and they don't see that as recognition, then that's much more on them and their direction and their character and an imprint on their future decisions than anything else. And just to the whole point of this, let me just tell you, I was supposed to speak in Washington, Seattle, Washington, this next weekend at a church, and a really good man, Pastor Roger Archer, a sweet man, I think got sideswiped. Let's just say he got ambushed. I think that's a good way to put it, right? He got ambushed, not physically, well, almost physically, but he got a call from law enforcement and said, hey, you're hosting Charlie this next weekend. 1,200 Antifa people are planning to come outside of your church, and they're the ones that form Chaz and Chop. And, you know, if you don't cancel the event, because we don't have enough people to counter it, they'll probably burn down homes in your neighborhood, residential area. You know, the elderly's at risk and women's at risk. And so I would have handled it a little bit differently, but I make no such judgments against Pastor Archer because he's a good man, and I think he got put in a situation that, quite honestly, is a political combat he's not used to, right? So he decided to cancel the event. And again, I have a lot of empathy for him. I think he's the victim in this situation. I really do. And why did he cancel it? Well, he called the governor's office. They said, we're not going to supply any sort of law enforcement to help against this. The local police only had 10 people. And so, look, this is a tactic that the KKK used to use against black meetings in the American South. So you should have got 100 on that piece, and I think you're very, very smart for mentioning that. Because what I could tell you is that I will not be speaking at that church this weekend in Seattle, only because a bunch of people threatened to go to the streets with weapons and cause violence. It's the only reason. And it's going to spread to more churches. This is a church. This is not the Republican Party of Seattle. This is a church. And the government did not want to intercede with it. But more, I know that your question was about what do I do about it. Do not give him a reason, ever, to dock you on anything that you do outside of the best possible course of action. Let me tell you what I mean. Don't give him what he wants you to do. Don't all of a sudden call him a name. Don't give a side remark or be snarky. In fact, live out the most respectable, gentle, compassionate person, where if he decides to continue to be torturous to you, which is what he's doing, then it's completely on him and there's no such moral justification he could possibly reach. And sometimes I find with some kids is, and I say this to some of our Turning Point kids, don't be snarky, because, you know, look, there's these professors definitely deserve it. But then all of a sudden they're going to use that as an extra reason again, like this, you always give me attitude, he's all this. I'm not, obviously you don't strike me as that, right? But understand this, that what you're dealing with is not alone. And then you just have to write on your piece of paper a value hierarchy, okay? And only you can do this. What matters most in your life? And if career progression and getting good grades matters more than continuing to say what you believe, then do that, okay? And for some people, that's what they do. There's a whole belief out there that you should cheat your way through college to get good grades. I do not hold that belief. There's another belief to go through college and to just write the liberal pablum because then you move up in life. I do not have that belief. But that's for you to decide. But I'm going to tell you this, no matter what, you will be blessed by making decisions that are a reflection of good character. Character comes from the Greek word. Character comes from the Greek word imprint, tattoo, into your soul. And your soul, your spirit, is a reflection of the decisions you make when it matters most. Not the decisions of, hot dog versus hamburgers. No, your soul ends up being, your character ends up being a reflection of what happens when you're under pressure. So pray and think on that. Thank you.
All right, Charlie, over here with Marcos, a question about the Second Amendment.
Hey, Charlie. So I'm hopeful we're going to win the culture war. I'm with you just because I know the great minds in Turning Point, all these great activists are awesome. So I have hope just like you do. But recently, we have problems with our law enforcement. Now, I'm a veteran. I was military police, so I back the blue.
Thank you for your service,
right?
by the way.
I'm with them, 100%. However, we have police officers now enforcing these mask mandates. They're, in Texas, for example, they're coming out and talking against constitutional concealed carry. So how do you think that's going to play out, where we have the good law enforcement and then we have these, yes men, as they say, who are going to try to strip away that Second Amendment right because it's already coming, and we're not going to be able to, as my old CSM used to say, finish the fight if we have to.
So let me first say, they're not going to go for guns immediately, okay? They're going to do three things before they actually go for weapons. Number one, they're going to make it illegal to use your weapon. So this is what happened with the McCloskeys in Missouri, right? So a couple hundred people come to their home, they just gesture a weapon without firing it, and they get charged with just merely gesturing their weapon. Number two, they're going to make it almost impossible to buy ammunition, okay? So if they can't go after the guns, they'll go after ammunition. So you got to think a little bit more multidimensional of what their actual goal is. And number three, they're going to tax owning firearms at such a high tax beyond its appraised value that's how they're going to tax it like a yacht or a private jet. So those are the three things they're going to do. Here's why. It's because of the D.C. versus Heller decision in the D.C. Circuit Court. They're going to struggle constitutionally in any of these laws to say that you do not have a constitutional right to own a firearm. And they lose in court almost every single time with this. There's a new decision that's about, actually a new hearing, I should say, new case that just went to the Supreme Court today, where this Supreme Court is going to rule on whether or not you have a constitutional right to have a gun outside of your home. And I think they're going to rule correctly on this, which will have big implications here in California for potential concealed carry and all this. So one of the good movements over the last couple decades has been that firearm laws have moved in the direction of liberty. And let me just say this, that the Founding Fathers gave us a Second Amendment for a very specific reason. It is not for self-defense against criminals. That's helpful. It's not for hunting, and it's not for clay shooting. Instead, the Founding Fathers knew that it is the pattern of despots and tyrants and sociopathic human beings to use power to suppress freedoms of others. It always replicates itself. So the Founding Fathers said, what can we put in this document to recognize a natural right given by God, not by government, that can protect all the other amendments? What can we have as a firewall against this tyranny? What can we put here so that people that love liberty at least have some capacity, if needed, God forbid, to protect themselves and their family against a usurpatious government? So let me give you an example of this. When the Chinese Communist Party was doing what they were doing against Hong Kong a year and a half ago, the power imbalance was so unbelievably stark. The people of Hong Kong were on the right side of the issue. They wanted freedom, they wanted liberty, they wanted autonomy, they wanted sovereignty. But only one side had the guns. Right. That is not a way to ever pursue liberty. Eventually, the person that has the guns is going to win that. Now, I will submit to you, actually, an armed citizenry prevents conflict. Because if the Hong Kong freedom fighters came with AR-15 strapped around their back, the Chinese Communist Party said, let's talk. That's what they would have said. Instead of that, you go obey us. The Founding Fathers knew this. And so I share your concern, but I think we must be very clear why we have a Second Amendment and what it's actually there for. And I'm happy to go through any of the numbers or statistics because it's a completely misrepresented issue, let me just say statistically, when it comes to this, how we deal with firearms in this nation. But understand, they're going after your weapons for a reason. Yeah. They're going after your weapons through ammunition and through registration and these other things because they know you're going to be easier to control if you do not have a capacity to defend yourself if a tyrannical or despotic government ever comes after you. So I share your concern. Thank you very much.
Hello. Good evening, Charlie. My name is Angel. I'm actually the chapter president for Turning Point
Thank
at
you.
UCR.
Awesome.
I'm a first-gen immigrant, and I'm waiting for my interview this coming week, so I'm actually really excited. So I hope if any one of you guys can keep me in prayers. And I think one thing that is really special to me is the idea of morality. And you mentioned that a lot tonight. And I wanted to ask you, how can we as conservatives keep each other in check? Because I see us struggling as well. What can we do to make sure that we're fighting for freedom united and we're actually doing it effectively? What are your thoughts about that?
First of all, you're a great person, and we need more people like you in our country.
Thank you.
I'll just say, you actually love the nation, and that's a deep question. John Adams said our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And so, it's a different speech that I give to mostly younger audiences, is the most important fight that you're ever going to embark on is not against the left, it's against your own desire and your own will. That we used to raise children in America in the 1970s, and we said, America's awesome, and you're the problem, and you need a lot of work. Now we say, you're awesome, and America's the problem, and needs a lot of work. We have a generation that taught young people self-esteem, not self-control. So what I encourage younger audiences to do, and you say, how do we keep each other in check, is you must know what the proper course of action is for not just a young person, but for all people. And what if I told you that a restraint keeps you free? Let me say that again. What if I told you what you don't do actually keeps you free? It's the opposite of what every single person in secular culture will tell you. It's the opposite of what Cardi B will tell you. It's true. What if I told you that our nation was founded on this idea? It's in the Harvard Law School in the stairwell. The law is the wise restraints that keep you free. So let's just start with the original listicle, the 10 Commandments. Pretty easy. 5 of how we deal with each other, 5 how we deal with our Creator. 1 that contains a promise, the only one that contains a promise, which is honor your mother and father so that you may live long in the land of which you are in. This is why totalitarians always try to break the bond between parents and children. That's why you got the term Mother Russia. That's why Mao Zedong put in the Red Guard. It's why in 84 in Orwell, he said very clearly, parents feared their children, where their children are reporting their parents. You start with those 10. Those 10 is a good starting point. But here's something that I encourage all young conservatives to do, which is hold each other accountable as well. That's a hard thing to do because when you're young, there's a temptation and an impulse to want to introduce the next forbidden thing, to want to be known as the person that's always pushing the boundaries. That's normal. What if I told you your normal nature is actually not what's going to keep you free, happy, content, or prosperous? In fact, the 10 Commandments, all of them, and they're just the normal laws that we've built the West around because that's the root of it, is that they're not given to you so that it's the fun police. They're actually given to you so that you might live more peaceful, peaceable, and quiet lives. And so here's really what we're at right now. We're in a theological debate in our country, and it might be different than you might think. It's not Calvinist versus Arminius. It's none of that stuff, okay? Instead, it's very simple. We believe 2 things, amongst other things. We believe there is a God, and you are not him. So, as soon as you recognize those 2 things, it's earth-shattering. You mean my will is not everything? Yeah, we get that you read a chapter of Nietzsche. You're not the most important person in the world, okay? I'm the Ubermensch. You're nothing, okay? God is dead. No, he's alive, okay? We're nothing more than a bunch of cells and passions and desires. Well, if that's true, why is it that everywhere across the planet people stop when they see a sunset? Why does some music sound better than others? Why is that some poetry just pops and resonates with our spirit? Why is it that the Tokyo Philharmonic plays Johann Sebastian Bach? Maybe it's because that music, that scenery, there's an order. There's a good. Some art is better than others. There's a proper way of conducting yourself. And typically, the more difficult thing is the good thing and the right thing. America will either fall or will succeed or thrive based on this. Are we going to pursue virtue or pleasure? Pleasure is easy. It's harder to restrain yourself from that. And by the way, for young people, it is more ubiquitous, more widespread than ever. From one more joint hit, one more night out, just open up the laptop and you'll feel better. And look, none of us are above anyone. There's no moralizing from me on this. We're all sinners. But if you want to all of a sudden not just have your politics be the most important thing, instead, if you make your proper course of decisions and who you are and how you act, that's actually the sort of things that you should all be thinking about and focusing on. And you guys need to hold each other accountable on that, where you're honest with each other. And that's why you need to find a good church, and you need to be pursuing truth in all things. And by the way, once you start drinking from the streams of liberty, you're going to want to find its source. And all of a sudden, you're going to realize that there is a good out there. There's a purpose to all this. The biggest lie that you are taught by secular culture every day is that there is no purpose to your action, your being, or anything you do. I'll submit to you, everything you do actually matters. And that's one of the most releasing things you could possibly believe in. So I want to compliment you, and good luck. You're going to do very well on your interview, and God bless you for being involved with Turning Point USA.
Thank
Thank you.
All right, here with Fatima, and she has an amazing question around something we're all facing, vaccines.
Oh, geez. Yep. Go ahead.
First off, I want to say thank you so much. I am a completely different person if I compare myself to the person I was a year ago, to your knowledge and to your videos. And it was thanks to that I joined a chapter in Cal State Fullerton. So,
amazing.
So my question is, I received an email, as well as many other students across the state of California, where CSU and UCs are joining together to support required COVID vaccination. Upon the approval of the FDA, just so that we can have class in person in the fall. So my question is, I'm not going to stand here, and just stay, just crossing my hands like, okay, what do I need to do? What do we need to do as students and young adults?
So let me tell you my own personal perspective. And I'm not saying this as a judgment or against anyone that made a decision. I am personally not going to get the vaccine at all. And I say this as I do not judge or criticize or accuse other people. Everyone should make their own decision, filled with knowledge, and pray for wisdom, okay? I am not going to do all of a sudden the thing where you go on TV and say what's the best for anyone. But I'm going to go a step further, that outside of the choice of it, the mandating of young people to get this vaccine is immoral and it's dangerous. And so, long past the time of my body, my choice, and look, what school do you go to?
Cal State Fullerton.
Cal State Fullerton? Look, if you guys are looking for a rallying call, if you're looking for something to do, whatever these people meet, wherever they make their decisions for public comment, you need to show up in massive numbers and say, look, we're not going to judge if other people did it, but you are not going to force my child to get the vaccine. That is not going to happen. And so you're in a very difficult position. And so I'll tell you what I would do. This would be a deal breaker for me, just so you know. You can make whatever decision. I would drop out of school over this, just so we're clear. I'm not saying that's the right move for you. Please listen to me carefully. I'm very careful to give individual advice because I don't know all the complexities and how hard you work to get into that. that's where a close-knit group of people steeped in wisdom should give you that advice. But for me, that's what I would do. But for those of you that are in a position to be the guardians of a society, I'm talking about the adults, please come and defend these young children that are now being put in the crosshairs. This is the time that we got to stand up for these kids. And so, again, I don't, there's a lot of other people that have written extensively about that topic. I look at this as a massive overreach. I don't trust their motivations as is, but the amount, almost they're zealots when it comes to this. It is with religious fervor. And I'll tell you right now, this is a no-go zone. We have to draw the line. I'm encouraged by your comments on it and your head in the right place, and I hope someone in this audience who might be involved on a local level can come to you and counsel you and help you with that, because I know there's a lot of people working in that space right now. But I want to commend you and encourage you. You are not alone. A lot of people are also fighting this, so thank you.
Hi, Charlie. My name is Luke Chavez, and I'm also a chapter president at Pacifica High
Awesome.
School. So you obviously talk a lot about being bold and how it takes courage to be an outspoken conservative. So my question is, how do we create more courageous people, especially in high school, for those students who feel afraid to have an opinion because of opposition on campus?
So what high school do you go to?
Pacifica High School.
How far is that?
It's in Garden Grove.
Okay, which is?
Orange County.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know California geography. So can I give you guys a little bit of tough but honest love here? Man, the number one thing that frustrates me is when I see young kids that are not getting the air support they need from the older generation. The one thing I told you about Avery in Minnesota, and I have dozens of examples in the last 6 months of this. What's amazing is that no adult stood up and defended the 16-year-old that was falsely maligned or accused of writing those text messages. I was in Dallas recently, and the whole meeting was about local engagement and involvement. And a kid steps up to the microphone, and he says, I'm running the Turning Point group at the local high school, and I've been called this and called that and all this and all that. And the parents in the room were stunned, and he's like, yeah, I've reached out for help, and there's almost none to be given. So some of you are saying, what can I do? What can I do? Man, go find the local Turning Point group. Go find the local young conservative. Host them over for dinner. Tell them they're not alone. Encourage them. Build them up. Fill them up. Because if you think you're facing a lot because your neighbor's going to call you a name, imagine going to a high school every day. What have you been called?
Racist, xenophobic, misogynistic, even though my board is all women.
Yeah. So, and have you lost friends because of this?
Yeah, I'm not really sad about that, though.
Yeah. See? Liberating. And so, look, here's what I'm going to tell you, though. And this might not need what you need to hear. In your moral bank account, you are getting deposited every single day more than you could ever imagine. So you might not feel that way, but you are getting ACH transfers every day, creating you to be a better human being. Where all your other friends, they're just bankrupting themselves. Because they're always going to be angry around the next thing. They're always going to be accusing. But you stand fast and you stand firm and you're clear and you don't get angry and you don't retaliate and you know why you believe what you believe. When you're 24, 26, 30, you're going to own the world. And that's where I tell these young kids is you're going to go through it, but it's going to strengthen the muscle memory and the muscle mass of your character. And that's what we should do to our young kids anyway, right? We should put them in high-pressure situations, and we should defend them against the baseless and senseless attacks. But also, it's like, you know what? You are all going to be tougher because of this. And you want to talk about the kids that are not going to be able to endure the inevitable suffering or the difficulty of life. It's those kids that are the ones that are throwing all those sorts of insults and backlashes for you. And so, but also know this, which is the happiest people in the world, and I use that word, Aristotle talked about happiness a lot, and it's very simple. It's the freedom you have in never having to pretend you're somebody else or disguising your belief is better than any home, plane, job. It is the greatest gift that God gives his children, is saying, every day I don't have to put on a costume. I don't have to pretend I'm someone I'm not. I am who I am in private and I am in public. And that's a gift that I wish for all people. And you have that gift. And you should be very thankful for that.
I know. So good. Amazing. We're over here with Sunny, and she's got a question about something I'm very passionate about, so I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Oh, boy, Samuel. Here we go.
So, first of all, I want to say thank you for everything you've
Thank
done,
you.
especially for helping young Americans fight for our freedom. My question is regarding around the mask issue. So,
Okay.
I know that it's different in each state. I know that the mask mandate is kind of different. As far as I know, the only place where I've been able to go in California and not wear a mask and be free, truly free, is in this very church itself, which I'm very grateful for. I think it's really strange, especially as a woman, that the left wants to free the nipple, but we have to cover our mouth and our nose.
That is, that's so true.
So my question is, how, as truly free Americans, can we fight against the mask mandate? Because it's not just like, it's not just local stores, it's everywhere that we go, we are forced to wear it. So how do we go about that? How do we fight against that?
Such a great point. So, I'll tell you, this, without getting into the scientific studies, I encourage you guys to check them out. There's plenty of scientific studies that show it's actually having an adverse reaction. And look, I'm mask agnostic. If you really want to wear one and you think they work, whatever, fine. You have liberty to do that. You had liberty before that or after one. The mandates are what bother me, but I think that more than that, and I've talked about the mandates a lot, I think we should have a different conversation, which is, has anyone ever had even a 5-second conversation of what are the downsides to having people wear masks? Now, I'm not just talking about the health ones. I'm just saying, does it make us more decent to each other? Does it make us more likely to be able to love your neighbor? You see, 6 years ago, I was on a campus tour, 5 or 6 years ago, and I spoke out against the Muslim hijab. Because I said it was dehumanizing against women, and I said that it is totalitarian and medieval and backwards. Now, of course, the media had their go at it. Of course they did. It's the same sort of principle here. And so here's another really interesting question that I don't think people are asking. Does it make you more or less likely to think independently and creatively and not be part of a cog in a machine of some sort of larger plan? And that's an interesting question. I think we all kind of know the answer to that. The other question is, why is it with almost a religious zeal, to use that term again, that these people are then signaling towards you that you must wear one? If it works, then you're wearing one, and so I don't quite understand that. And if you've already had the virus, you have the antibodies, why do I have to continue to wear one? And then allegedly the vaccine is going to work, and then you still have to wear one. 2. And so, how do you resist against that? Well, first of all, I have been underwhelmed at the legal challenges. The fact that there has not been a robust HIPAA challenge saying that it very well might be a violation of my health privacy is really beyond me. And so that still needs to work its way through the courts. So here's how you break the mask mandate almost immediately. It's not easy, but I'm a big believer in civil disobedience. Now, let me be clear. You applaud, but there's a moral Christian way to do civil disobedience. It's the way Christ did civil disobedience. So there's rules. Number 1, you must be very clear in the why of what you're doing, the purpose. Number 2, you must be willing to accept the punishment completely and totally, no resisting, no evading, and you lean into the punishment. Okay? You say, that's me, take me away, whatever it is. And then number 3, you are joyous and optimistic and cheerful when that punishment comes towards you. You're not a victim because you're the one that asked for it to come. So what does it look like? Well, I'll tell you this. If 1,100 people here, if you guys all decided to go into Walmart at once with no mask on, the mask mandate would end very quickly. Now,
let's do it.
I think we got a field trip, Jurgen, that you got planned here, so. Look. And it's the little things that matter with this. Look, I never wear one when I go in, and if they absolutely demand it, I need that product, I put it in. The airline thing's hard, right? Because I fly so much, and I just have to do it. And then they changed the mask rule where I used to wear this like gaiter, and now it has to be, because of course, epidemiologically, that's so much safer, right? No one can explain all of it. But look, here's the broader point, which is that, and here's just a question. I'm not saying the answer to it. Are they social conditioning an entire country to make you more willing to obey what they tell you? Where do they stop? These are questions that I think you're all smart enough to be able to answer. And if you allow the mask, what else are you going to allow them to do? And so this is not a little thing. And if you believe it works, go ahead. You could wear one for the rest of your life. But this is not a small thing. This is a question that is so significant to our humanity. Let me read this Aristotle quote again, because I think it's really important for emphasis towards the end. It'll keep all people as unknown to one another. This is what tyrants do. They keep people unknown to one another as possible, since familiarity breeds a greater degree of mutual trust. A nation cannot exist if you don't trust your neighbor. A nation does not exist if you can't even see your neighbor. And I'll say this, I said this earlier. When I see a 3-year-old that thinks the normative way a human being exists in the world is masked up, sit down, obey, command and control. This is a beacon of freedom. But now, it's time for this beacon of freedom to spread it throughout this community. Because I'm telling you right now, people are waiting for other people to stand up against this mask nonsense. They are waiting for it. And so, remember the rules. So Jurgen, you might get arrested for not wearing the mask. Unlikely, but it's not a small thing. And they are getting repealed in a lot of states, but they're going to keep this going until people push back against it. So thank you so much. Next question.
Hi, my name is Lucas, and I actually like that you just said about how people are waiting for someone to stand up.
Yeah.
I feel like on a college campus, on a high school campus, in any big city, there are so many loud leftist people.
Yes.
And I'm wondering what you think would be a shot heard around the world for conservatives to also be just as loud and to not just silence themselves.
So it's a great question. And we talked about this recently. I'm going to start doing this. So we're getting married in 12 days. We're very excited about that. And then we're going on a honeymoon after. So right after the honeymoon, Jurgen, I'm going to need your help with this, okay? Right after the honeymoon, I'm coming back, and I'm going to do this spontaneous project where I'm going to appear at school board meetings across the country. And this woman talked the other day. I know you all saw that video. You know you could show up to your school board meeting, all of you. So maybe here at Awaken Church, maybe you say, hey, our small group, all 80 of us, 100 of us, or 10 of us, we are going to go to this school board meeting, and we are going to do public comment, and we are going to look our leaders in the eye, and we are going to give public testimony on that. So the question is, what is the shot heard around the world? It only happens when there's more voices actually being elevated. There's more people stepping into those moments, challenging and confronting their leaders. All of you have a super weapon, and that's called your phone. Next time you come in contact with someone who's in charge of you, talk to them with a Christ-like attitude, 100% grace and 100% truth. And you ask questions like Christ did, and you film yourself talking to that person in charge of you. Here's the law of averages. There's 1,200 people in this room, a rather enthusiastic bunch. One of you in the next week is going to come across someone in charge of you that has taken your freedoms away in the next year. What are you going to do? Not just stand up, you're going to approach them, and you're going to film it, and you're going to ask them the questions, and you're going to be ready for that. In the next month, 100 of you will come in contact with them. In the next year, half this room will. And I'm talking everyone from Nancy Pelosi to your local mayor, anyone that infringed on your freedoms and liberties. And what they fear the most is a confrontation. And even more than that, they fear that confrontation being filmed. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to have that 100% grace. You're not going to call them names. You're going to say, sir, I pay taxes in this local area. Why are our kids not in school? Sir, do you know that kids are actually committing suicide more than dying from the Chinese coronavirus? You're going to hold that phone in your hand. It might be trembling, but that's what courage is, right? And that's how you're going to change the world. And then, as soon as you have that video, you're going to email it to me at freedom@charliekirk.com, and I will make sure a lot of people see that video. And I'm telling you right now, a lot of people. It's true. Because we got airtime we have to fill. And I would love to fill our 2 hours of radio every day with just normal people standing up against the tyrants. I would love that. And again, I'm not doing people are going to say, you're doing the Maxine Waters thing. Let me reemphasize. Christ-like, 100% grace, 100% truth, with the iPhone in hand, calmly saying, why are you doing this to us? Can you answer for this? Because those people work for you. You don't work for them. That's the contract and the compact that we have in this country. And so to answer your question, what does that moment look like? It looks like people like in this room beginning to do that. And even beyond that, I believe we're close to that kind of moment. I really are. I really do. I believe that we're so close to this situation happening where decent people are going to say, that's it. I'm not going to take it anymore. So thank you so much for your question. I appreciate that. Next.
Amy? I'm here with Amy, and she has a question about something that you deal with often, actually.
Oh, boy.
Hi, Charlie. I work in not big tech, but tech, so I'm kind of here in secret.
Oh, boy. I don't know if this is the best place for you to be in.
I know.
In secret.
I enjoyed your Washington Post op-ed about the sort of tension between the publisher platform issue and then that conservatives would prefer not to regulate. And so I just wanted to make sure that you knew that the nerds in my community are working on, have really already built solutions that use decentralized technology and blockchain and that kind of thing to completely make censorship impossible, functionally, technically impossible, and to create a true public space on the internet, which is what we're lacking right now, which is why we have this issue that you're talking about, because all the spaces are private. So I was just wondering if you, at Turning Point, had considered using a tool like Open Index Protocol or something like that to make your information kind of more censorship resistant.
Yeah.
And that, you talked about self-censorship, and I think that one of the things that would help us to overcome self-censorship is if we were able to really know that our voices would be heard and that this would be that kind of path.
Sure. I'd love to look into that technology. I think the present problem is that almost all the conversation is kind of fenced into 4 or 5 different companies right now, right? So it'd have to take a user change as well to gravitate towards these other companies, right? Yeah. So let me tell you, I wrote that op-ed a year and a half ago. I've become much more, let's say, committed to the issue. I used to say we shouldn't regulate these companies. Now I believe we should regulate and break up all these companies.
But the thing is, you can do it without regulation. You can fix the problem without regulation.
Yeah, but how would you fix it? I'm just curious, like if everyone's on Facebook and Instagram, how would you change their behavioral habits?
So what you would do is you would, there's one thing that you would do regulation-wise, and you would say, you would follow the case precedent of the 1956 consent decree that happened with AT&T. They would basically force them to open their indexes. And if their indexes are open, yes, but that's the thing, is that Google's index is a public good. It's all the information on the internet. And if that was opened the way that they opened AT&T's patents with the 1956 consent decree, then there could be true competition, because the decentralized systems could basically ingest all of that information, and then it would be completely available, and anybody could build an app on top of it.
So I hear you. I think there's also another problem, though, than just censorship, and that used to be like the focus of mine. I just think that generally these companies are too big, and they're monopolistic in their behavior, and the censorship is a byproduct of their stance in the market, right? But I hear you. I'd love to learn more about that technology and all of that. I think here's the issue, though. So if, let's say you have a couple, you call them nerds with that company. So here's the issue, is that they're going to be offered a deal to sell their company to Google for $300 million if the idea is good. And it's going to be a hard thing to say no, right? Because Google comes in, and I want to get a couple more questions, but if Google comes in with this massive purse, and they say, we're going to have a ridiculous multiple on your company to take you off you've seen it, right?
Sure. Yeah. Totally.
So really quick, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, totally. 100%. Two things is that the community of the decentralized web is just kind of against that in general, that idea. They're very idealistic themselves. You guys have allies there, just you don't realize it yet. And then the other part of it would just be that the technology can't be stopped. I don't know how, I can explain it technically, but not here, obviously.
Yeah,
but
like
it just can't be. And so it's just functionally different than anything we've seen before.
Sure. No, I'm interested in learning of that, and my current focus is making the current oligarchs suffer for what they've done to our country. So, thank you. All right, next question. We'll take a couple more. I know it's getting late, everybody. Yeah, a couple more.
Hello, Mr. Kirk. My name is Raul, representing TPUSA.
Thank you.
UCR.
God bless you.
Yeah. I had a question for you. First, I want to read a quote from Hillary Clinton from the 2020 Democratic National Convention. She says, if he, Donald Trump, had put his own interests and ego to the side, seeing the humanity of a child being ripped from her parents at the border, or a protester calling for justice, or a family being wiped out by a natural disaster, that would have been a good thing for America and for the world. I wish Donald Trump knew how to be a president. Boo, right? Yeah, right? Yeah. Let me see. All right, well, I just wanted to say, with that being said, from an advocate point of view, can Hillary's lack of engagement reflect negatively, considering lack of engagement within the border crisis, condemning violence in the recent riots? Can that reflect negatively on her, considering she ran for office and promised to be, representing?
I don't think a lot of people are putting a lot of mind space behind Hillary Clinton right now. But look, it's probably, I don't know if she'll ever run for anything again, but I could tell you that, I could tell you this, one of the greatest moral goods that Donald Trump ever did to our country is making sure she never became president, let me tell you what. So unfortunately, she's not held accountable for any of the things that she does or says. None of them are, but I appreciate the spirit of the question, so thank you. Thanks, man. Okay, one or two more. Where's Sam? Okay.
Right here. Just mining the gold here in the audience. Go ahead and ask your question.
So I'm an artist, and it's one of the areas that conservatives are very lacking in,
Yes.
And, we see, Cartoon Networks doing all, saying stuff about systemic racism and stuff.
Yes.
And you see people talking about it, but you don't see people doing anything about it. You see there's a lot of, wealthy conservatives and stuff like that could invest into companies becoming conservative animation studios or publishers or things like that. And so it's what do you think? How do we infiltrate the arts again? Bring back Hollywood to our side?
I agree completely. Look, one of the biggest mistakes is that conservatives 30 years ago only cared about winning elections and publishing white papers and donating to their liberal colleges, when the left invested in Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network and Disney and Paramount and all these different mediums of cultural communication, and we're looking at this landscape and we control nothing. And so now it has to be a moment of building new things, new exciting stuff. Here's the biggest, if you want to know the biggest, if anyone out there is funny, the biggest we have a comedic deficit in our country right now. There is so much material out there. Seriously. If anyone is even a little bit funny, just start a show. Seriously. I'm not kidding. But you know why no one's funny? And then we'll do one more. Comedy is truth. You laugh because something is true. Right? God has a good sense of humor too sometimes. And you laugh when it's oh my goodness, that makes sense to me. Well, no one's saying anything true anymore, so no one's laughing. And also, the left cannot stand mockery. They cannot, against themselves. They can't talk. You never make fun of the party. You never make fun of the person in charge. Comedy is a way that you can, there's a reason why Stalin and Mao, they all locked up the comedians almost instantaneously. And so if anyone has any ideas of how to be funny, please start your own channel. We need more content, whatever it is. There's not enough happening. Everyone's so serious all the time. We are dealing with people that are literally getting rid of Dr. Seuss and saying that math is racist and that men are women and women are men. There's so much material here that, no, seriously, it's like, it is the greatest opening and I'll say this, that I have a whole idea for a show called Corporate. It's like a new Office, but it's like, kind of like dealing with all of this stuff where, anyway, it's just, yeah, but it could, thank you, but you think about, no one's actually making any shows or any comedy over the woke industrial complex. It is the easiest thing ever to make fun of. And I'm telling you, you want to communicate with the most amount of people, you make them laugh. It extends your life. It puts you in a better mood. It makes you think. And this other thing, last thing I'll say, the funniest people are also brilliant. Never discount that. It's really hard to be continually funny and not wise and not smart. So I know that you're talking about animation studios, but I hope that there's a change in kind of the mindset of people say, I want to invest in things that matter and creative. We do a lot of that at Turning Point USA. You guys know Benny Johnson. He's a very funny guy. And so we do a lot of that. Okay, last question.
Okay, hi, my name is Adam Maynard, and I'm in 6th grade.
Wow.
Yeah. And at my school, there's like this liberal teacher that's just very annoying. And she always makes us watch this like CNN 10 or whatever, like fake liberal stuff. And I just want to know if like how I can like help the people that don't really know like what's actually going on.
So, what's your name again? What's your name again?
It's Adam.
I'm going to be working for you one day, okay? So Adam, let me tell you a story. When I was in 6th grade, I went to MacArthur Middle School outside of Chicago. And they used to make me watch this thing called Channel 1 News. Anyone remember that? It was on this old kind of static-y television. And I remember my teachers' names. I'm not going to say them. But one teacher in particular, science teacher, decided to introduce to the class this new documentary, bold documentary called Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore. And I was in 6th grade, as you are, and she showed it to the class, and everyone was crying and weeping. I was unmoved by it. So I thought to myself, this is highly irrational that the world is going to end as quickly as they say it's going to end. So I remember writing all these questions, very like, well, how much human activity do we actually have to hamper and prevent, all these sorts of things. Teacher didn't like it. But I'll tell you this, that what do? You're in 6th grade. I spoke out, and I learned as much as I could, and I'm so glad I did, because 6th grade turned into 7th grade, and the conversation expanded, and 8th grade turned into freshman year eventually senior year. And being in 6th grade, I remember that moment where I said, you know what? I'm going to be disagreeable. I'm going to just be honest. I didn't do very well in that class, I can tell you that much. But what you're dealing with and you're wrestling with is going to turn you into a mature and wise, courageous person. And we want to say something, Adam?
Do you mind taking a picture with me after?
Of course I'll take a picture. But I'll say this, Adam. I'll close with this, and I want you all to look at Adam, which literally means man. If you guys want to know, what are we doing here? What's next? Adam's in 6th grade, which means you're 12, 13, right? 12? It's a fun age. Adam can vote in 6 years. So 6th graders, we don't really take them that seriously. We're like, politically, okay, they're going to grow up. The question is, what kind of country are we going to leave Adam? Right? What are we going to do now? The question we should really be asking is, why is he doing more than I'm doing? He's coming to an event tonight and asking me advice how he could stand up to his teacher to stand for truth. He's in 6th grade asking this question. And so, when I say that people are moving into action, when I say people are getting into the posture to save the country, that's a leading indicator. So I'm saying to everyone out there that, I get it, you got good lives. We're going to tie it all together. This is a moment that I want, more than anything else, that moment when Winston Churchill went and smiled at his war secretaries. And it's going to happen with courage. It's going to happen with truth. It's going to happen when Adam goes back to his 6th grade teacher tomorrow and says, I heard this guy named Charlie Kirk, and he told me you're wrong and that our rights come from God. That's what you're going to say. And
he watches you all the time.
And it's going to start here tonight. So tonight, you have to make a decision. Tonight, you're going to say, am I going to be a spectator and slap him on the back? Good luck, Adam. Have a nice life. Or I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to get in the arena right now, and I'm going to act boldly and courageous. I'm going to go run for school board. I'm at least going to show up for it. I'm going to go get petitions. I'm going to get involved in the recall. I'm going to start to listen to more of these issues, these ideas. I'm going to go into some Walmart without a mask with 100 of my clothes. Whatever it is, tonight it starts to chart your course of courage and action. And I want to thank you all because I'm given hope by all of you. It is not over till we say it's over. We are going to win. Thank you, guys. Guys.